The Amnesia Fortnight Movie is a movie about Amnesia Fortnight, which is a 2-week-long game jam within Double Fine, which is a video game studio in San Francisco. This is not the first time that Amnesia Fortnight has been filmed, and it's not the first time the footage has been posted to YouTube for free, but it is the first time that all footage has been condensed into a feature-length movie. So I thought it would make sense to write a review and maybe encourage some people to check it out. If you'd like more background info, stick around. Otherwise, I have timestamps in the description if you'd like to jump right to the review. So there's going to be a fair bit of background info here, mostly because I think a lot of this stuff is interesting to talk about, and also because it's helpful to have some context before we jump into this review, and it's going to be especially important to get some of this background if you're not too familiar with the video game industry. Just a heads up. So first up, what is Double Fine? Double Fine Productions is a first-party game developer based in San Francisco, and they were somewhat recently acquired by Xbox Game Studios. Double Fine was founded by Tim Schafer, who happens to be one of the most well-known and well-regarded individuals in game development, I think that's fair to say, and in particular, he's a major figure when it comes to humor in games. Schafer is most well-known for his work on a number of different games, including the Monkey Island series, Brutal Legend, Grim Fandango, Day of the Tentacle, Psychonauts, which is getting a sequel very soon, and Broken Age. Most of his games are point-and-click adventures, and many of these games have won awards. Schafer himself has won plenty of awards as well, and people really like these games, probably because they're pretty good, and maybe more so because they're funny. He founded Double Fine in 2000 while LucasArts was busy being dead, and the studio has since shipped an impressive number of games, as well as publishing indie games via Double Fine Presents. Double Fine was also a pioneer in the area of Kickstarter-funded games, with Broken Age, which was released in 2 parts, and the development process of the game was documented by 2-player productions, who have continued to cover various Double Fine activities ever since, including Amnesia Fortnight. Amnesia Fortnight is an event specific to Double Fine. Apparently, it first came about during the development of Brutal Legend. Schafer felt that it would be nice for the team to take a break from the game and all of its trappings to work on different projects. Basically, the whole studio takes 2 weeks. Anyone in the company can pitch a game idea, and then votes are tallied to figure out which games will get made, and the staff splits up into teams to work on one of the games. It's not something they do every year, just every so often. And according to Schafer, it's also become a way for company leadership to see how different people handle leadership roles, which I think is pretty smart, because normally workplace performance is judged based on how people do with whatever work they're assigned, and there's a good chance that they don't give a f about the project they're working on. So not only can Double Finers try to get a game made regardless of their professional role, but everyone working on each project will most likely end up filling multiple roles and developing skill sets that they might not otherwise touch. On the surface, Amnesia Fortnight feels like a pretty progressive management tool. It has practical benefits for company leadership while letting staff have fun exploring weird ideas and challenging themselves. And in general, one of the most interesting aspects of seeing documentary footage of AF is getting to see a workplace functioning well. This is a bit of a personal tangent, but you know, it's my video, I'm going to talk about whatever I want. So it was only in the past year that I found any of the Amnesia Fortnight videos. I think it was sometime during quarantine, and I ended up watching everything available. I think the only years recorded were 2014, 2017, and this full-length movie that was just released is about the AF session from 2019, so pre-pandemic. There's an excellent story thread in the 2014 series where one of the project leads, a concept artist named Derek Brand, is struggling to finalize some design choices for his game. One of his team members is Brad Muir. I never heard it pronounced. He's at not Steam, he's at Valve now, I think. Anyway, at the time, he was a project lead at Double Fine, but obviously for this project, he took a back seat. So early on, Brad is coming up with some great design choices that everybody seems to like, but ultimately, Derek doesn't want to go in that direction, so they essentially have to scrap that stuff and start over again, all while under the shadow of a hyper-stressful game jam timeline. So for one thing, it was great to see all this happen without all the awful reality show tropes where everybody is just angry and catty all the time. That's not what's going on here. These are just normal people. They're not cartoon characters. But on top of that, it absolutely blew my mind that this disagreement didn't result in terrible passive-aggressive swipes or long-standing grudges. And it's not that I expected these people in particular to treat each other badly, but when I compared this situation to some of the places that I've worked, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that everyone involved was just mature and handled things in a very healthy way. This guy who's a bit shy stood up for his ideas, and this other guy who's normally the boss swallowed his pride and did what was best for the project.
Derek I just was really trying to get him to do it, just totally own it. And he walked through it and was doing so great. I was like, yes, this is gonna be awesome.
And man, places I've worked, there would have been at least one fight or maybe a grudge that blocks a well-earned promotion years down the line. This one startup I worked at, not gonna say the name, everybody was just miserable and bitter all the time. There was no HR department. Promotions were based on personal friendships, Peter principle stuff all over the place. There was a time where this one guy punched a hole in the wall in the middle of a shift and nobody blinked. They ended up outsourcing the whole department to the Philippines. Bad. So part of my investment in the Amnesia Fortnight series is that it's a window into a workplace where people seem to be generally happy, and as a result, the workplace as a whole feels pretty healthy. Even just seeing people smiling, I'm trying to think of workplace. I don't know. I can't really think of that happening in my experience. A bit of a disclaimer on that whole thing. I know that no office, no workplace is perfect. There's always some kind of drama and politics stuff going on. Employees are human beings, shit happens. I also understand that these Double Fine videos from Two Player Productions are, at the end of the day, marketing. I'm not saying the production company tries to cover stuff up or anything like that, but even in any documentary filmmaking, editing helps tell a very specific story. It's never purely objective. However, even with all of those asterisks, after watching hours and hours of footage of all this stuff, Double Fine does kind of seem like a great place to work. It might not be. I don't know. I don't work there. I don't know anybody who works there, but it does come across that way to me. And in the video game industry, with its reputation for studios that are just light speed abusive, that's really good news. It kind of gives me hope, as corny as that sounds. It also blows my mind that there are people out there who actually like what they do, that there are people who are willing to put a bunch of time into their work because it's fulfilling to them. I can't really imagine what that must feel like. That is just so beyond my experience. Back to the very interesting facts. So the Amnesia Fortnight videos for 2014 and 2017 were released each day as the event was happening, which is insane. I don't even want to think about having to import and edit hours of raw footage and then cut it down into a 30-minute clip and get it rendered in a day, in less than a day, because they're recording this stuff too. It kind of hurts to think about. But here's why it's important to say that that's how they used to do these things, because those documentary series for 2014 and 2017 ended up being about 12 episodes, roughly half an hour each. So in other words, a really long runtime, around 6 hours, maybe more. It varies a little bit. So it was really interesting to see that the most recent edition was under 2 hours, along with some hour-long featurettes where each of the team leads talks about their games, but that's kind of a different entity. So just on the filmmaking side, I really wanted to know how this would compare when you kind of take a series and turn it into a singular movie. That's kind of what the shift feels like to me. And I guess that brings us to the movie itself. Is there anything else I want to say here? Carol Shaw shows up in the 2017 series and in this movie, and she's kind of a hero of mine recently. She did this great GDC talk about responsible management, which is also one of the only GDC talks that has addressed just how bad it can be to work in games. I respect that a lot. I just wanted to mention her because it wouldn't fit anywhere else in the review. So there's that. Otherwise, I think we're good to go. Right after I get some more coffee. Hold on. The Amnesia Fortnight movie was released on April 29th, 2021. And I missed it. I only watched it the other day. I didn't see that it was a release, so please forgive me if recency bias seems to get in the way. And again, the depicted events took place in fall of 2019. If there was a specific reason for not releasing it live like the other times, I don't know what it was. I mean, the most reasonable answer seems that they didn't want to do the crazy crunch of producing the stuff and editing and all that, which is fair, but this is a long gap. This seems to be a real conscious decision. It also seemed like there was less audience involvement for this Amnesia Fortnight. For the other years, I know that the internet got to vote on some game pitches and things like that. They were seeing everything almost live. In terms of the quality of this production, there's not too much to say. It looks about the same as the other years. These guys at 2-player, they shoot run and gun style. Kind of feels like a modern version of the DA Pennebaker stuff, maybe some Les Blanc material, things like that. There are definitely some nice shots in the mix, but that's not really the point. Also, unlike Pennebaker movies, there are a ton of talking heads. So in structure, it feels closer to like a news feature or a reality TV show or like The Office. But I think I'm just going to move on to some things that I did and did not like about this iteration of the Amnesia Fortnight documentary, all while trying to avoid spoiling the whole thing in case you want to go check it out, because I think you should. The video has about 30,000 views right now at almost a month, and that's like almost within the range of my channel. And I haven't even been bought out by any giant corporations at all. I've got no support over here. Likes. I'm not gonna use that clip. Let's start positive. I really liked this year's cast of characters. I mean, I know they're real people, but I'm using characters because it's a criticism term. In particular, I really liked the project leads that got selected this time around. The leads always end up being a big part of how the episodes feel, and I thought that every one of them had cool ideas for games. Lisette had a great pitch, and it only got better when she elaborated on the inspiration behind it.
You know, I move through the world, you know, as a woman, and you get treated a specific way, and then I have a job where I'm a leader and I'm expected to be this different way. I constantly have to have a velvet glove and an iron fist.
Asif had a neat idea, and if you're unaware, this guy originally worked for 2-player productions but pitched a game in 2017 and got selected, and later he was hired by Double Fine as a game designer, I think, or a level designer, which is a pretty cool arc for a doc series. Lauren's pitch was great, and I'm sure it was an interesting challenge to make a game fun where you're essentially removing power from the player, which is kind of the exact opposite of traditional game design and of GameStop slogans.
What are you gonna do now?
Go home and go on a Tinder date.
And the blueprint pitch from Gigi and Emily, it was like a little taste of San Francisco, just a smidge of SF stuff.
And then these are the pots. And yeah. So the whoop guys, detention.
I think that's enough on that. I also like that every time we get a new Amnesia Fortnight, the Double Fine team has changed significantly. There's a decent amount of turnover, so you get to see lots of new folks, and you get to enjoy seeing all the returning characters like Key and Rusty, who happen to be some of my favorites. I also enjoy seeing Tim Schafer just walking around, being a dad. I don't know if he's a literal dad, but he's very much a dad, just a goofy video game dad.
The puppet can say things I can't say. Lazy!
Just imagine, like, do you think Druckmann would ever let himself be shown as something other than like a godhead? Probably not. That's my impression anyway. And I do enjoy that I can watch this whole thing in less than 2 hours. It's definitely more convenient than spending 6 or 7 hours with it. However, I also think the condensed runtime brought along a disproportionate number of problems, which brings us to dislikes. I was really excited to see that there was a new Amnesia Fortnight out, and in fact, I got some friends together to watch it the other day. Even though none of us work anywhere near the games industry or even in tech, well, not anymore in tech, we just like watching this stuff. It's just plain entertaining, really. Unfortunately, the Amnesia Fortnight movie this time around, it had very little impact on me, and even now, after a rewatch, it's difficult to separate this movie from my experiences of watching AF 2014 and 2017. Going from 6 or 7 hours to just 2 is pretty jarring, and the whole time, I had this weird sense of just how much I was missing. It's not like I watched all the raw footage and then watched the edited version. I just knew in the back of my mind, I knew there was so much that I wasn't seeing based on the experiences from the other years. It's kind of like when you're sitting around and it feels like there's a person missing and you don't really know why. And while watching it, I was constantly asking my friend which day they were on within the fortnight, and was constantly surprised to hear that it was much further along than I had expected. So that's the pacing issue for me, and I know that I might have felt differently about it if I had never seen any of the other years, but this is just the situation I'm in, and I wasn't crazy about how everything seemed to fly by in comparison. In addition, the structure was kind of a miss for me, and here I have to say that I'm not trying to be too harsh on the filmmakers. Documentary structure is tricky at the best of times, and something like Amnesia Fortnight doesn't really lend itself that well to a traditional 3-act structure. You have your clear beginning and your clear ending kind of naturally in what's happening, but in between you have 10 days and you have coverage of each day that has to be split up among 4 different teams, while also being cut down in runtime from 30 minutes of previous years for each day to about 10 minutes or less. So instead of the movie feeling like a steady ramp up to a climax and then release, it kind of felt like a stone wall here, a stone wall over here, and just soup in between. Just so much, a lot of soup. The days run together, and it also felt like there was a lot of time spent away from one specific team or two, or from a specific person, and by the time that they showed back up again, I had almost forgotten about them. This also makes it difficult for clear narratives to emerge. I already mentioned that in years past, there were some great storylines that came about naturally, which is exactly what you want in a documentary, and in the other format, there was plenty of time to spend on those storylines. But here, I didn't get a sense of any strong narrative elements. Now, maybe it was just an uneventful year, or maybe there just wasn't room for that material, or at least not enough room for it to breathe without catching some exhaust fumes in the process. As a result of the pacing and the structure, the impact was lessened. It felt very understated, and that's not always bad, and it's also not to say that nothing interesting happens here. Like I said, the team leads are great, there's lots of fun people hanging around and doing stuff, even though Penn Ward wasn't there this time around. I also like how every one of the games turned out in the end. I don't think that's a spoiler. It shouldn't be a surprise that these highly skilled people did great work. But overall, it really didn't stick with me very much. And I know that that's a very subjective take, but as I mentioned earlier, there's not much on the technical side to discuss. 2-Player Productions did very good work, and maybe they or Double Fine decided that this one should just be a feature. Maybe that's to help make it eligible for festival submissions. I have no idea. But as far as I can see, the documentary series format worked just a lot better for this specific material. So I know that wasn't the most glowing review, but I would absolutely recommend this movie to just about anyone, even if you have no serious interest in video games. And I heartily recommend Amnesia Fortnight 2014 and 2017. I think you can still tip 2-Player Productions as well for the videos, which would be a very nice thing to do. And again, it's one of the only opportunities I'm aware of to get a good look into a game development studio outside of the more glossy documentaries that you tend to see. And come to think of it, I have a pretty good idea why some other studios don't allow camera crews in while they're working on stuff. It's just a hunch, but I'm also right. At the very least, watching Amnesia Fortnight gives you the opportunity to get lost in the escapist fantasy that you have a job you enjoy that pays you well to do something you're very good at. It kind of hurts coming out the other side of that fantasy, but it's worth it. And that's all. Thanks for watching my video. I have made other videos also and written a couple of books. You can check those out if you're feeling charitable, and thanks for stopping by.